I used to want to save the world. This beautiful place.
There's a bunch of DC movies lined up for 2026 and beyond, with several projects at different stages of development under DC Studios. 2024 marked a fresh start for the on-screen universe, setting the stage for James Gunn's reboot, which kicks off with 2025's Superman. Following that, the DCU is moving quickly to explore different corners of its expansive world. At the same time, Matt Reeves is continuing his own Batman storyline with The Batman Part 2, which exists in the Elseworlds, adjacent to but separate from the main DCU. So, let's dive in. Supergirl. Back in January 2023, James Gunn officially announced that a Supergirl movie was on its way, and a little later, the release date was locked in for July 26, 2026. Not long after that, it was also confirmed that Craig Gillespie would be the director. What makes this version stand out is the stark contrast between Superman and Supergirl's childhoods. Superman grew up on Earth with a loving family guiding him, but Supergirl actually lived through the horror of Krypton's destruction for the first 14 years of her life before she even set foot on Earth. Gunn has been very clear that this take on Supergirl won't be like the ones people are used to seeing. Instead, she's being portrayed as a much more hardened and powerful figure. Casting news hit in January 2024 when it was revealed that Millie Alcock, known for her role in House of the Dragon, would be stepping into the shoes of Kara Zor-El. The movie is based on the 2022 comic book series Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King, with artwork by Bilquis Evely. It's actually the second big feature project under the new DC Studios leadership of James Gunn and Peter Safran, following Gunn's Superman film. The screenplay is being handled by Anna Nogueira, who adapted King's comic for the screen. When Gunn first described the project, he laid out the differences clearly. Superman was raised by caring parents on Earth from the time he was a baby, but Supergirl had to grow up on a fragment of Krypton, surrounded by death and violence, until she was a teenager. By the time she arrived on Earth, she was already carrying all that trauma, making her more intense, and not really the traditional Supergirl audiences have gotten before. Another big piece of news tied to the movie is Jason Momoa being confirmed to play Lobo. Momoa had been hoping to take on that role for years, so this was a dream casting for him. Interestingly, Lobo doesn't actually appear in the Woman of Tomorrow comic, so how he's going to fit into the story is still under wraps. But given Momoa's star power, it's not far-fetched to think his version of Lobo will show up in multiple DCU projects beyond just this film. At first, the movie was officially called Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, directly referencing the comic. But in June 2025, Gunn revealed in an interview with Rolling Stone that they decided to drop the expanded title, and from then on, the film would simply go by Supergirl. Clayface. Among the lineup of DCU projects, Clayface is definitely one of the more unexpected ones. The movie is set for release on September 11, 2026, and it will be part of the mainline DCU. There aren't a lot of plot details available yet, but what we do know is that Mike Flanagan, who's known for his work in horror, wrote the script after pitching it himself to DC Studios. Flanagan was initially set to direct too, but due to scheduling conflicts, James Watkins has taken over that role. The Batman side of the DCU is slowly starting to take shape, especially since both Batman and Clayface appeared in Creature Commandos. Clayface, however, is going to be a smaller budget horror film. Early reports hint that it may take inspiration from David Cronenberg's The Fly, which suggests a disturbing body horror vibe, something that would really set it apart from what audiences have seen in the MCU or even in most DC projects. The film is set in Gotham, which, of course, is famously Batman City. Gotham is packed with iconic characters and grim stories, so it makes sense to anchor Clayface there. On top of that, set photos revealed a poster for The Flying Graysons, the circus act Dick Grayson's family was a part of before their tragic deaths. The detail is significant because their deaths are what eventually lead Dick to become Robin. In different versions of the story, the cause of their deaths has varied. For example, in the 1995 movie Batman Forever, it was Two-Face who was shown to be responsible. Because the Flying Graysons poster is present, it could just be a cameo-style Easter egg, or it might hint at the family having a larger role in Clayface. If that's the case, the movie could be laying groundwork for how Robin's origin story will connect to the wider DCU. In Creature Commandos, Clayface shows up disguised as Professor McPherson, which means his character has already been seeded in the shared universe. But the solo movie is expected to take audiences back in time to his actual origin. This version of Clayface, Matt Hagen, is described as an actor with a big career and an even bigger ego. After an accident that leaves him horribly scarred, he transforms into a creature that barely resembles a human anymore. That kind of tragic backstory makes him prone to rage, envy, and violent outbursts, which could make him a perfect candidate to be the villain behind the Graysons' death in this version of the DCU. If he sabotages their performance out of jealousy, it would create a direct tie between him and Batman's world, while also setting the stage for Dick Grayson to eventually step into the Robin role. It makes sense, too, because The Brave and the Bold is already set to introduce a seasoned Batman working with his son Damian Wayne. But before Damian, Batman had several sidekicks, with Dick Grayson being the original Robin. In the comics, Bruce Wayne connected with Dick because both had suffered through losing their parents to violent crime. That shared trauma became the foundation for their partnership and their fight to clean up Gotham. Having Clayface be the one responsible for the Graysons' tragedy would deepen the emotional ties between all the characters. Even though Clayface has already popped up in a contemporary DCU project like Creature Commandos, the solo film can establish his darker beginnings. Later, with Dick Grayson confirmed to appear in the 2028 project The Dynamic Duo, it would allow Clayface to stay relevant as a long-term villain. The DCU is being built as a truly interconnected universe, so characters are expected to cross over regularly. For instance, Rick Flag Sr. is already set to appear across several different projects like Creature Commandos, Superman, and Peacemaker Season 2. If secondary characters can weave through multiple stories, then a big villain like Clayface could definitely have a lasting impact beyond being just a one-off antagonist. Man of Tomorrow. The DCU has another major Superman project lined up after Gunn's Superman movie, and that's Man of Tomorrow, which is expected in 2027. Even though it won't technically be a direct Superman 2, it will be his next big on-screen story in this timeline. What makes this one especially interesting is the tease around its main villain. In September 2025, Gunn posted a photo of the second draft of the script for Man of Tomorrow. The cover included his name, the original Superman creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, but also a peculiar diagram showing the anatomy of a human head. It displayed the brain, throat, and mouth in detail, which instantly sparked speculation. Fans quickly connected the dots to Brainiac, one of Superman's most infamous villains who has the power to control and manipulate minds. Brainiac has been a long-demanded antagonist for a Superman movie, yet he's never been given a proper live-action appearance on the big screen. That little script clue made people believe this could finally be his moment. What makes Brainiac a strong candidate is how he could fit into the broader story. It's already been teased that Superman and Lex Luthor will end up forming an uneasy alliance in this movie against a common enemy. Brainiac would be the perfect kind of villain to force that kind of team-up because he's such a massive threat that even someone like Luthor would have to set aside his hatred for Superman, at least temporarily. Bringing Brainiac in at this stage of the DCU also opens the door for the universe to grow in scope. He's a galactic-level threat, and introducing him could expand the DCU's cosmic side in a way that feels organic. Since Supergirl already deals with outer space and alien worlds, the franchise seems to be laying the groundwork for more space-oriented storytelling, making Brainiac's arrival feel like a natural next step. Brainiac also makes sense because he's been part of Superman's comic book history for decades, often ranking among his greatest villains alongside Lex Luthor, Darkseid, and Doomsday. But while those other characters have had their moments in film adaptations, Brainiac hasn't been given the same chance. That makes him both familiar and fresh at the same time. If he does end up being the villain in Man of Tomorrow, It not only provides a compelling challenge for Superman, but also sets the stage for potential bigger arcs in future DCU films. With Superman and Luthor reluctantly working together, and with Brainiac testing both of them in ways audiences haven't seen before, this could turn into one of the defining battles of the new DCU. Man of Tomorrow is scheduled to release on July 9th, 2027, and all signs point to it being a pivotal entry in shaping where the franchise goes next. The Batman Part 2. When Matt Reeves released The Batman in 2022, it was pretty clear from the start that he was building the foundation for a new trilogy centered on Gotham's Dark Protector. So it didn't really surprise anyone when a sequel was confirmed. The Batman Part 2 is now officially set for release on October 1st, 2027, although it had originally been scheduled for October 2nd, 2026, before being pushed back by a year. This upcoming movie won't be part of the core DCU timeline, but rather a DC Elseworlds project, meaning it exists in its own corner of storytelling, separate from James Gunn's main continuity. It will continue the story left off by the 2022 film, as well as tie into the Penguin series, which premiered in September 2024. Robert Pattinson will once again step into the role of Bruce Wayne, also known as Batman, although most other details are still being kept under wraps. Speculation has been swirling about the possible direction the sequel could take, and one strong theory is that it might adapt DC's No Man's Land storyline. In that arc, Gotham suffers a devastating earthquake that isolates the city and transforms it into a battlefield full of chaos and desperation. Reeves himself has teased that the story will dig deeper into the corruption that lies at the core of Gotham. He mentioned that the script is already in DC's hands, and that the studio is very excited about it. According to him, the story will show aspects of Bruce Wayne that weren't explored in the first film, pushing Batman into situations where he faces forces beyond his control. The production timeline is already lined up. The script was completed in June 2025, and filming is expected to start in spring 2026. That schedule gives the team enough breathing room to stay on track for the 2027 release. Along with Pattinson, Colin Farrell will also be returning as Oz Cobb, better known as the Penguin, so fans can expect his story arc from the HBO Max series to carry forward into the movie. The Authority. The Authority was first announced on January 31st, 2023, when James Gunn laid out his ambitious plan for DC Studios' Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters. Unlike traditional superhero groups like the Justice League, the Authority is known for being ruthless, often taking extreme measures to accomplish their goals. That's why a lot of people expect its tone to be somewhat similar to The Boys, the Amazon Prime series that shows what happens when superheroes cross moral lines. The film doesn't have a set release date yet, and Gunn has admitted it has faced some development hurdles. For now, it seems to be on the back burner, so its future is a bit uncertain. Still, some pieces have already started to fall into place. Maria de Faria made her debut as the engineer in Superman, and that sets her up as an important player in the Authority. Since her character is a central figure in the team, it looks like she'll serve as the connective tissue between Superman's story and this new group. Even though the timeline for this movie isn't clear, the concept is bold. The Authority could add a much darker flavor to the DCU by showing a bunch of heroes who don't play by the rules. If it eventually moves forward, it could challenge the way audiences think about superhero morality in this shared universe. The Brave and the Bold. The Brave and the Bold will reboot Batman once again, but this time within the main DCU continuity, not as an Elseworlds project like Reeves' trilogy. That means a brand new actor will be stepping into the role of Bruce Wayne, separate from Robert Pattinson's version. This movie will also introduce Damian Wayne, Bruce's estranged son, into live action for the first time. Damian, who is the child of Bruce and Talia al Ghul, is one of the more controversial Robins because of his violent upbringing with the League of Assassins. His presence will automatically set this Batman apart from other versions we've seen. The film will be based on Grant Morrison's influential run of Batman comics from 2006 to 2013. Although it was announced in early 2023, updates have been sparse since then. Andy Muschietti, who directed The Flash, is attached to direct, but the timeline for production is still unclear. The Brave and the Bold looks set to bring a family-focused mentor and son dynamic into the DCU, which is something very different from what Reeves is exploring in his separate trilogy. Swamp Thing. Another intriguing project in the Gods and Monsters lineup is Swamp Thing. This film will mark the DCU's first true horror story, and James Mangold is both writing and directing. Mangold, known for movies like Logan and Ford vs. Ferrari, has described his vision as a Gothic-inspired standalone that dives into the dark and eerie origins of Swamp Thing. The character of Swamp Thing has always been rooted in horror, especially with Alan Moore's celebrated 1984 run on the saga of the Swamp Thing, which redefined the character and leaned heavily into supernatural elements. This movie is expected to draw on that kind of storytelling, making it more atmospheric and terrifying than the usual superhero fare. Even though Mangold has said he sees the movie as a self-contained gothic horror piece, it will still connect to the larger DCU. That shows Gunn and Safran are willing to experiment with genre while still keeping everything tied together. Swamp Thing could be a strong signal that the new DCU isn't afraid to stretch beyond the usual action-adventure template and dip into darker tones. Wonder Woman. In June 2025, James Gunn confirmed that a Wonder Woman movie is in development for the DCU, with Ana Nogueira set to write the script. Nogueira is already very familiar with the DC world since she's writing Supergirl as well. DC Studios seems really happy with her work so far, which is why she was also briefly attached to a Teen Titans movie. However, Gunn later clarified that she had shifted her focus entirely to Wonder Woman, making that project the bigger priority. This new Wonder Woman movie will exist separately from Paradise Lost, the HBO Max series that serves as a prequel exploring the history and politics of Themyscira. Paradise Lost was compared to Game of Thrones in tone because of its emphasis on intrigue and conflict among the Amazons. Even though development slowed for a while, Gunn recently reassured fans that it's still moving forward with a pilot script already in the works. As for casting, Gal Gadot will not be returning to reprise her role as Diana Prince in the DCU's rebooted timeline. That leaves the door open for a new actress to step into the role. Names like Alexandra Daddario, Adria Arjona, and Ana de Armas have floated around as fan favorites, but DC Studios has made it clear that casting won't happen until the script is finalized. If the writing is completed by the end of 2025, casting could take place in 2026. Well, that's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe because we'll be covering more updates on this soon and other exciting upcoming movies and series. We'll see you next time.